The first preschool I remember, Kaye Davis was the teacher. And my daughter Sandy went to that preschool class. She was 4 or 5. And Kaye done an excellent job. And all the kids really enjoyed it. And then when that class passed, we get another class. They went 2 years to preschool. Then they went on to school, regular school.
So when we first arrived at Sunset Gap, we did not have a preschool program. My dad was the director, and my mom was in early childhood development with a degree in that area. And so she became the first preschool teacher at Sunset Gap that I was aware of. And so as I got a little bit older, I got to participate in the program, and we looked forward to reading the books in the library and learning the colors and shapes and playing out on our playground and playing Red Rover and different kinds of games. Mom was so patient with all of us, and it really helped us when we got to the first grade.
We had boys and girls from the community who all had their own uniqueness. When the Williams family, Betty and David, were ready to move from their cabin house to a house where they now live, Duran inspired the group to move, so they loaded up a blanket with all the housekeeping equipment and dragged it across the corner, from one corner of the preschool room to another. And Justin saw the road grader come up the Sevier County side of the road, and the next morning he came and showed a picture of a road grader that was very complex. Kids showed their talent early on in their lives, and I was thrilled to be a part of it. We sang and we read books, and one little boy who was very shy wanted to tell me something, so we were seated in a circle in small cane-seated chairs, and he came over and whispered in my ear whatever it was he wanted to say. And the other kids accepted that as conversation. So they all learned to get along with each other. Bernice Breeden was particularly proud to have a preschool because she had been a teacher of 8th grade at Cosby School for years, and she was maybe my biggest cheerleader.
I was a parent aide with a preschool which Kaye Davis started. In the later days of preschool, I drove the van when the regular driver couldn't be there.
Now, preschool was a big thing to me. I thought it was just the grandest thing in the world that I was going to get to go to school. So I went up there, and Miss Kaye Davis she started the preschool program. And we had those little chairs, and there's still 2 of them at Mama's, and I think my wife may have one, my sister's got 1 or 2, but these little bitty chairs, and they were different. They painted them different colors. Some were blue, some were yellow, some were red, and some were green. So you had your own color of chair you sat in. So you were learning colors by the chair you sat in. We learned to count. We learned our alphabet. We learned to read a few words, actually. Kaye read to us some, and we got a snack. I remember we get these little cups of Kool-Aid. Man, I thought that's the grandest thing in the world, to get a cup of Kool-Aid, and sometimes it's a homemade cookie I'm sure she had made herself. But we learned manners. We learned that we were supposed to sit up straight, and I may not display the best manners all the time now, but I learned them then. You had to sit up straight. You had to say please and thank you. You had to be courteous to other people. You learned a lot of those life lessons they always say you learned in kindergarten, everything you needed to know. But it was neat. She'd give us, we got our name put on a piece of paper and pinned it to close the first week or two, I guess, they were there, so other people could know her name. I thought that was really neat. She'd call on us sometimes for different expertise, she called it. She may call it something different. But she knew a little bit about each of us and our families, and if she knew we were doing something really interesting, she might have us tell that during story time. You know, and it's a big thing for kids to get to relate. Of course, I know my wife taught preschool after Kaye and Joy Black for many years, and she told me some funny stories. She said sometimes you have to be careful what you ask little kids because they'll tell you everything. And it was just neat to put your voice in the room. It was neat to set those little rectangular tables, to color, to learn to make your letters, to get up, march. We learned to march around the room in rhythm. We learned to clap and march at the same time. So there were a lot of kinesthetic things that were big in early childhood education that Miss Kaye knew to do. She'd actually went to college for that and was very good at it. And she always had a good tone of voice. She could lower her voice when telling a story, or she could raise her voice. But even when she called you down for doing something you might be going to get hurt about, it was always in a kind, corrective manner. So that was a really good thing. And I remember we had snowmen we were going to color. And somebody said, what color do we color the snowman? And this was really neat, I think, when I look back on it. She said, what color do you want your snowman to be? Well, I knew snowmen were white, but all of a sudden, we could make a snowman of any color with them crayons we had. So I just thought that was neat. And that was her method of teaching, was very, very child-friendly. It was still guiding. She did a good job of guiding you without being over-demanding, but she gave you flexibility. And I will say later on, my wife, I saw her integrate a lot of creative learning. Learning should be fun. Learning should never be dull, drudgery. I've been in a lot of schools in my life, and one of the worst things to do is walk into school where nobody's having fun. Parents, students, teachers, principal. Something got to give when it's like that, when nobody's having fun. It all can't be playtime, but you need to have constructive play and build in music and rhythm and things like that.
And after talking to Joy Black, she asked me if I would be interested in a preschool assistant job. And I have a background in elementary education at Maryville College, so of course I was very interested in that. So in that year I started preschool with her as the aide, and she only stayed a year. She was an older lady, and she wanted to go ahead and start some early retirement, so she asked me if I would be interested in taking over as the teacher. I was very shy and not super confident about it, but I began my career at Sunset Gap. Our program was very interesting because there wasn't many preschools back then. There was only maybe Head Start and a few other very small programs. So there was a lot of need for preschool back then. It was very interesting because our van, we had a van that I think it was a 12-passenger van that we picked up the children in, and it was approximately an hour to pick up the children and an hour to take them back home. So that added extra 2 hours to our day, which was only a 2.5-hour day. We began preschool at 9 and we ended at 11:30, and so it wasn't a long program, but that extra 2 hours for some children was quite a bit added on. Our preschool driver was also our assistant, and that was probably a harder job than mine, I always felt like, because they had to drive on these mountain country roads. Some of them have cliffs and hills and curves, and we have taken a few visitors on those rides, and some of them would compliment us and just say, how do you do this? You'd have to have nerves of steel to ride on these country roads like this. So it was quite interesting trip to do that. My program consisted of mostly teaching the basics, but our main goal of our preschool program at the time was to teach the children social skills, structure, and listening skills. Because if you can do that in life or before kindergarten, that was the most important thing that you could learn. And then anything above and beyond that was just made them more ready for school. We had 2 classes. We had a 3 and 4 year old class, and we had a pre-K class, pre-kindergarten. They both went the same amount of times. They both had snacks early on and before they left, because of our bus ride being so long. Some of them needed a little extra substance before they got on the bus for the afternoon and when they came in the morning. I was a very hands-on teacher. All my programs were taught hands-on, very interactive. I would do math skills, science skills, art skills. We did a lot of field trips, and it was a fun time. Like my husband said, I didn't like things to be boring or stuffy. I enjoyed my many years at preschool. I have so many fond memories of all my students. I actually had taught 2 generations of students at Sunset Gap.